Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got a really great guest on today. He is the founder and leader of Tomorrow, and he began his career at 16 years old designing websites, and in 2001 was hired full-time as a designer slash art director. Please join me in welcoming Greg Durrell. Welcome.
Thanks, Thomas. I'm honored to be here.
Ready for 20 questions?
I'm ready. Thomas, it's not lost on me that some absolute design legends have blessed this podcast before me, from Eric Speakerman to Debbie Millman, and a little intimidating at first, but I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, here we go. Number one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, so I run a boutique design and branding studio called Tomorrow Creative Services. And our mission is to collaborate with ambitious organizations trying to make a positive impact. And I have the privilege of collaborating with some incredibly talented creatives and leading design teams on behalf of organizations from all over the world. And I've been working in the field of design now for 25 years. I became aware of design as a job around 1995. As a teenager, I was a big Nine Inch Nails fan. And through the liner notes in the Downward Spiral album, which was this highly detailed, immersive packaging experience, I discovered that it was a job for somebody to put this together. And then a few years later, I was accepted into a high school art program where half my days were spent doing math, English, and science. And then the other half was learning about art and technology. And all the computers were actually donated by Apple at the time. And it was there where I learned about design. I learned about audio video production, web design. And in this program, it's called Cyber Arts. I met some incredibly talented humans, many of which are still my friends today, and I've collaborated with on and off for decades, including Matt Boyd. And in my second year in the program, a new student arrived. His name was Alex Shukas, and he introduced us to a new approach to design. And it was specifically through a reference of a British design studio at that time, the Designers Republic, and particularly the work of Michael Place, one of the designers there. And when I saw it, the work was almost this maximum minimalism. And they did a lot of design and motion graphics for ambient techno artists at the time. And their approach to design and aesthetics just blew my mind and captured my soul. And in the late 90s, the internet was a very friendly and optimistic place. And I began an email correspondence with Michael Place. And, we hung out on the same message boards. Those used to be a thing in the 90s. And through Michael's work, I really began to understand the importance of understanding design history, and particularly the Swiss international style of design. And by the age of 16, I was reading Grid Systems and Graphic Design by Joseph Mueller Brockman, Emil Reuter's Typography. Armin Hoffman was another big influence for me. And the more that I understood modernism, that was about clarity, communication, order, and structure, the visual world around me began to make more sense. And especially growing up here in Canada, I mean, we are surrounded by all these incredible examples of modernist design and logos that are still in use today, from Canadian National Railways to our national flag, which, I then anthologized in a documentary film 20 years later called Design Canada. But the more I learned about modernism at that time, and again, I was fortunate to have some really great mentors and collaborators. By the age of 16, I knew design was what I wanted to do with my life. Now, to fast forward to today, I feel that I live at the intersection of almost science and art. On the science side, our work requires this process of immersion, to arrive at a really deep understanding of how a product or service works. And that can be anything from a geothermal exchange technology company to an organization that wants to replace single-use plastics with biomaterials. And I think what I'm good at is synthesizing analytical thinking in combination with business goals and objectives, and fusing a little bit of magic, that is an artistic creativity, to develop narratives and visual forms that are relatable, understandable, And if we do our job right, engaging.
Great, I love it. And for the audience, if you guys are interested in the Canadian episodes, check out our early supporter, Dr. Garnett Hertz. He has a great MIT Press book out on art and DIY. So number two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
5 years ago, I hit probably the lowest point professionally in my life, and it naturally spilled into my personal life. We were working with a really demanding client that I could not satisfy, but I was determined to make this project a success. And through that process, I had sacrificed everything around me. And one day I was almost jolted awake, and I was able to pull out of this tunnel vision, and I looked around my life and just felt like I was letting everyone down. I felt like a bad business partner, a bad team leader, a bad dad, husband, son, brother, friend. There wasn't a single area of my life that I could point to where I was thriving. And one day I was explaining this to a really close friend of mine, and he suggested that I meet with a shaman and try 5-MeO DMT. So DMT is referred to as the God molecule. It's an extraction from frog venom, and it's believed to be in all living things, but we just haven't really looked for it yet. It's also to be the chemical that floods your brain when you die, and your whole life kind of flashes before your eyes. So I met with a shaman and I tried this. And through this experience that only lasts 5 minutes, I died and I left my body, but my soul was still intact. However, I was no longer human anymore, but I still carried with me all the experience and conversations and relationships that I've built. And this experience taught me a few really important things. First off, that these molecules that I've inherited that make my physical body are not mine. They're simply borrowed, and I will eventually leave them behind. And I want to leave them behind in a better place that I inherited them. I also learned through this process that tomorrow isn't promised. Our time is limited, and it's so important to make the most of our time here and really focus on doing what you love. And then back to that kind of professional rut that I was in, I realized that this project had stolen all the joy for something that I love more than anything else. And from that day forward, I was determined to never let that happen again.
Great, I love that. Okay, number three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
So this is also I struggle with this question because this is all I know. I as you kind of mentioned in the opening, I started working when I was 16 years old. I don't know if I found design or it found me, but this is what I love. It's my passion in life. And there's Steve Jobs Stanford commencement speech where he talks about you can only connect the dots in life when you look back. And one of my very first jobs was working at War Child Canada. Shout out to Dr. Samantha Nutt and Eric Hoskins, who run this fantastic organization that help war affected children around the world. And there, when I was 17, 18 years old, I realized, well, looking back, I realized this experience had a profound impact on me because I could use my skills, interest, and passion to help make this world a better place. I mean, I wasn't just working in a design studio selling cheeseburgers or something. We were making an impact. And again, in retrospect, I'm so grateful for that opportunity because it has really defined a huge part of my career. So I do this because I love it, and it's also all that I know. But fundamentally, I do believe designers can contribute to this world and make the world a more positive place.
Great, and some people struggle with number four. The question is, what does your future look like?
Yeah, so I really don't think too much about the future. I mean, I do have lofty kind of goals and audacious ones as well, but I do really focus on my present. And don't worry about things that are beyond my control. And in those instances when those things beyond your control inevitably fall apart, I try to find humor in that and overcome. So yeah, I don't focus about the future. I do have goals, but I do my very best to just stay grounded in the moment.
Great. And five we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Yeah, so I mean, it goes without saying that I am fortunate to be born in Canada. Our country is far from perfect, but I'm blessed and grateful to have grown up in Toronto, where I was surrounded by so many different cultures, different types of people, different ideas. And obviously, the design legacy of Canada, and specifically what happened in the 60s, has played a huge role in my life. I mean, I made a documentary film about it. Um, but at the same time, I'm not sure what role place really plays in my life. Um, Ever since I was about 18 years old, I've had a laptop pretty much attached to my body since the very first PowerBook came out, before they were even called MacBooks. So place is important. I'm very Canadian. I'm very proud, but in the realities of the world that we live in right now, we're so connected that in some ways, place also doesn't even matter.
I like that. So if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
So I've thought about this one a lot. I think um, I would say a few things. Number one is learn to trust your intuition. And connected to that is that confidence will come with time and experience. When you start off a career in design, at least for me personally, it was hard to know if what I was creating was good or not at times. But you learn to grow, and through that experience, you figure it out along the way. But it takes time. And the other kind of really important thing that I would say is that get ready to fail, because if you want to be great at anything, design, you want to be a great teacher, you're gonna have to fail a lot. I was lucky that at a young age, I had achieved a decent amount of success early in my career. I mean, I was in the right place at the right time for the dot-com boom in my teenage years. I began working in design studios when I was 16 years old on my summers off from high school. I was featured on the cover of the technology section of the Toronto Star when I was 18. But I made so many mistakes early on. And I think it's so important to embrace. I mean, I still make mistakes today, but it's really important to embrace those mistakes, and when things go wrong, to really learn from them. There's that saying that champions aren't made on the podium; champions are made in how they handle adversity.
Great. And seven, what's a day in your life like?
Yeah, so I wake up super early. I wake up at 6, if not earlier, and I pretty much dive right into work. I try to get at least an hour in the morning before my daughter wakes up. She's 5. And then I take her to school for 9. She's highly punctual, even more punctual than me. She hasn't been late for school once. She always wants to be there early. So what that means is that we're typically in the playground 20, 15 minutes before the school opens. And I try to use that time to hang out with the other kids and the other parents, and really kind of build community. That's a big part of my life. And I can be back at my desk for 9:03 a.m. and I just full send from there. I typically work through lunch, or I work out during lunch. I also try to really get time off the computer. I work till 2:57. That's my cutoff time that I got to get back to pick her up. And then it's a bit of a freestyle from there, depending on what she needs. I mean, she's 5, so sometimes I have to cuddle with her on the couch. Sometimes she wants nothing to do with me, and I go back into work. But I always pick up the work again later on in the evening. So that's like a typical work day for myself.
Nice. And eight is around lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
I'm what I would call an extremely curious person. I read a ton of news. I try to stay up to date on current world events. And I'm constantly seeking improvement in my life in every areas from, relationships to my mental health. My physical health is really important to me too. I want to be in the best shape of my life when I turn 50. That's still many years away from now. But I do have these goals that I try to work towards, and really I'm always open to expand into new areas, to try new things. I'll try pretty much anything at least once. But I rarely kind of look or follow other designers' work anymore. For me, progress is really about seeking references outside my area of expertise.
Great. And tools. Can you talk about your use of digital and analog tools?
Yeah, so I've naturally used the Adobe Creative Suite. Man, I even remember Photoshop when it didn't have layers. You used to have to place something in there, and you had to full commit to it. So not much of a surprise. Like the digital tools are really the primary thing that I use. It's also kind of funny though that my technical skills probably haven't really evolved since about 2005. I don't really follow trends, and sometimes I see cool tutorials on Instagram that I save, but I like literally never go back to look at them again. But really, I think the biggest tool I use is my mind, which I try to constantly sharpen every day through thinking. Again, exercise is a really big one for me, taking time off the computer. And then into the question of the digital nomad part, it's as I mentioned, that earlier, the laptop has been connected to my body for decades. And I used to be a digital nomad, although I do still travel quite a bit for work, but now I'm more of a digital homebody with a tiny boss, I would say.
Great. And halfway number 10, how do you deal with work-life balance?
So I'm not really sure what that is. My life is just one. I'm grateful to be given a little bit of talent that I've done my best to maximize, and design has just enriched my life and taught me to find beauty in the world in maybe unexpected places. I've never felt like I've had a job. I've also never had another job. So there is no such thing as work life for me. It's all just one. I never stop thinking about what I do. I mean, I can be camping and still thinking about the latest brands we're working on, or the next presentation I have to do. That said, I do try to really take time off and get outside and be offline. But I'm grateful that my life and design is fused into one.
Nice. And if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
It's hard to imagine this one because again, I've never had another job and this has just been part of my life, but I have thought about it, and I think I might be a lawyer. I know maybe that sounds a little opposite, but both the profession of design and being a lawyer has a very client-centric approach. It's all about the attention to detail, communication skills, critical thinking and analysis, negotiations, and storytelling a little bit as well. So, yeah, I've always really loved the show Law and Order, like the original ones, not like today where they push a button and press enhance and all that crap. I don't like that, but the original ones from the '90s have always really resonated with me. So, yeah, if I wasn't doing something else, I don't know, maybe I'll go to law school.
Nice. And what would you not like to do with your career?
Waste my time for sure. That's it. I don't want to waste my time. Time is limited. That's full stop. I don't want to waste my time.
How about a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Yeah, so I do have one that I use often, and funny enough, it's a Mike Tyson quote, but it's everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that just resonates with me, especially in those areas of life that you just can't control sometimes, and you got to roll with it. So that's my quote. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
And how about a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Mood boards. I hate mood boards. I hate the idea of mood boards, Pinterest, all that stuff. Ah, man, I don't know. I think it leads to the sameness in design in many ways. And not to say that points of reference aren't important, but I don't know. I just mood boards, it's making me feel icky right now.
Nice. And you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
So I'm gonna go with a word that was bestowed upon me when I was at the Zurich screening of the Design Canada film. I shared the stage with Rich Gottschalk, who is a legendary Canadian designer. He was one of the first to really even bring that Swiss international style to Canada, and he's one of the main characters in the film. The word he used to describe me was tenacity.
What keeps you up at night?
Nothing, nothing. I do have I have an active mind that I can't turn off sometimes, but like I mentioned before, I don't worry what's beyond my control. I live in the present and I chip away at big goals, and I full send every day.
And a dream you're chasing?
I'm currently working towards disrupting the political landscape in Canada. I did get approval to say that, but I'm going to leave that there for now, and more to come on that later this year.
Great. And last few here. What inspires you?
Exploring, staying curious. I love the process of sharing energy with people, whether it's a conversation or a yoga class. I also kind of feel the same way about nightclubs in the same way, when energy and people are kind of in sync, that's really inspiring for me. And a lot of the time for me, it's references outside of design. I mentioned Trent Reznor early on in Nine Inch Nails, and techno music, electronic music is a huge part of my life. And then to just kind of throw in like another extreme music example, the hip hop producer Jay Dilla. He's been a huge influence in my life. Like Dilla's music changed my understanding of time. The way that he takes old samples and flips them and makes them new, and the way he takes new and flips it and makes it old. And his work and his life really taught me the importance of ambition and purpose. He was on his deathbed working on his final album Donuts, which is an absolute like magnum opus. And through his work and his approach to life, it has inspired me that to acknowledge that how fulfilling one lifetime can be if you dedicate yourself to the pursuit of doing something that you love.
Great. And 19. Any advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I learned really early in my career that I might never be the best designer. I mean, I wasn't even the best designer in my high school art class. Um, but I did learn early on that I could be the hardest worker, and I refused to be outworked. I think so much of this industry in design and almost anything, it's 90% perspiration and 10% inspiration or talent. So that has really stuck with me. It's something I truly believe. Again, you might never be the most talented, enter any word you want, but you can be the hardest worker.
Great. And finally, number 20. How can our listeners keep tabs on you, and what's our call to action?
Yeah, so I guess my personal Instagram account is Durrell. If you want to follow the design studio tomorrow, you can find us at Work by Tomorrow or workbytomorrow.com. And yeah, let's stay awesome, make this world a great place.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. You're a celebrated designer in many ways, and it's a true pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Thomas. I really appreciate you reaching out, and it was an honor to be here.